What's up, everybody? Give me 1 second. Let me just tweet out the link. Sorry, give me 1 second. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome into the Daily Dose. Sean Redden, I'm your host, as always. Nick D'Amelio in the background producing. Always got a shout out to him. And as always, we are powered by unsportsmanlike content and brought to you every day by Viget Sports. Download the Viget app in your Play Store or App Store. Use referral code UC Sports. That's the letter U, the letter C, Sports, and get 1,000 free Viget coins to use and play with on their site. And it's really fun. It's one of my favorite apps to use. That's exclusively where I'm posting my Red Hot Locks every week for the basketball and then upcoming MLB season. So you're going to want to be tuned in over that so you don't miss out on the free money I'm giving out every day. That's the Viget app in your Play Store or Google Store. So, Eagles obviously are the biggest news today, and that's going to be the main focus of the show. Nick Sirianni, the Eagles' new head coach. Maybe the fact that he's an Italian guy, it's a name that radio callers and Philadelphia people are actually going to be able to pronounce. I was not looking forward to having to hear Jason McDaniel or Josh McDaniel or whatever it is if we hire Josh McDaniels. And then obviously the other candidate was Deuce Staley, and I didn't want him to be the head coach at all. I understand some Eagles fans did because they're used to saying Deuce, Deuce when he was running the ball for the Eagles, and then now as a head coach, let it go. He wasn't a good running back coach. He shouldn't have been a head coach. He shouldn't have been an offensive coordinator. Nick Sirianni is a very good candidate. I've actually got the opportunity to watch him break down film, and he actually referenced two Eagles plays. One when they were playing the Tennessee Titans earlier, and Carson Wentz, the quarterback in 2018, and then he also referenced the game-winning Super Bowl play to the touchdown pass to Zach Ertz, and he talked about exploiting matchups, getting running backs on linebackers, using motion to deceive the safeties and coverage and getting to exploit the mismatches like that. So maybe Nick Sirianni being here means Zach Ertz may be back because one of the plays he highlighted was the touchdown pass to Zach Ertz. But we're going to get into all that. I have a fun show planned. We have Rob Maadi, the host of from 97.5 The Fanatic, is going to be joining us here in a couple minutes. And then Ed Kracz from Sports Illustrated. I've had him on the show before. Ed's an awesome guy. And he's going to be joining us at 7:30. Both of them have different takes. Rob is actually pretty close to Carson Wentz, and I know he's had some radio silence since this whole thing. Hasn't spoken to the media since he got benched. Hasn't spoken out even on Twitter regarding Doug Peterson's firing. So a lot of people are curious to hear what Carson Wentz has to say. Maybe Rob can give us some insight on that. So I'm excited to talk to these guys. And then obviously we have the NFL Championship Sunday coming up this week. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers will be at the Frozen Tundra in Lambeau taking on um, Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. And then, of course, in the AFC, we have hopefully Patrick Mahomes led Kansas City Chiefs taking on Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. Going to be interesting to watch their matchups. As a football fan, I'm going to be so disappointed if Patty Mahomes can't play. Dave Layton in the comments. You the man. Nah, you the man, Dave. I'm sorry about your team last week. And hey, it is what it is. I had the Bucks money line, so I'm not too upset. But I know it sucks for you, especially since Drew Brees is heading out the door. Maybe Drew Brees is heading out the door. He hasn't said anything official, but it seems that everybody in the know is saying that Drew Brees is out the door. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that, Dave. And what do you want to do with the quarterback position going forward? Are you ready to put in Jameis Winston? Let me know. But again, Mahomes, it was kind of weird to watch him get the concussion. He didn't really take a blow to the head. It was more so to his neck. I know they said it was a pinched nerve, but he was still in concussion protocol. And it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out because it's not your ordinary injury, and he was already dealing with a toe injury. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But we're going to go ahead and welcome in our first guest of the show, Rob Maadi. As you can see in the background, he covers the Eagles for the Associated Press, and he's also a host on 97.5 The Fanatic, and then also does wonderful work with the Faith on Field. And Rob, I want to thank you for joining me.
Hey, what's up, Sean? How are you, buddy?
I'm good, Rob. Again, thank you for joining us. And I actually talked to Rob earlier in the day and told him the first time I met him in person was at the Carson Wentz softball game. It was his first ever charity event that he had at Citizens Bank Park. And me and then Nick, who's obviously in the background producing, that was our first ever media credentialed event. And we had the luxury of taking the elevator with Rob and immediately introduced himself, shook our hands, and kind of made us feel welcome in like the new school of journalism. So again, I always appreciate him for that, and of course, taking time out of his busy schedule to hop on here with me.
Well, man, I appreciate you telling me that, reminding me about it, because I try and do that as much as I can, because the press box and being in the locker room when we could be in a locker room could be really intimidating for a lot of people, especially young journalists, young broadcasters. So I know when I was going through it 20 years ago, there wasn't a lot of people who would reach out to you and welcome you. And I was like, I want to reach at that point when I get there. I want to be that guy. So happy to do it anytime I see anybody. And now there's more and more people who are getting media credentials, which is really cool. And it's allowing for people to fulfill their dreams and keep pursuing their goals. And I would tell everybody, keep on doing it, man.
Of course, yeah, that speaks volumes to the type of person you are. But while we're here, we have you on to talk about the new Eagles head coach, former Colts offensive coordinator, coming from Frank Reich. Give me your initial thoughts on the hiring of Nick Sirianni.
Well, I think of Nick Sirianni coming from Indianapolis, and clearly the Eagles are targeting somebody who was schooled under Frank Reich, and the link is pretty obvious. Carson Wentz thrived when Frank Reich was here for 2 seasons. They won a Super Bowl when Frank Reich was here in 2017. And if you're going to target somebody outside the system, that would be somebody that I think knows a little bit about how to make Carson Wentz work. So what this tells me is, even though I thought there was some doubt about whether the Eagles want to try and continue with Carson Wentz here, because we heard 11 days ago, Jeffrey Lurie refer to him as an asset. He didn't really commit to a starting quarterback. This really speaks volumes to me about the direction they want to go. They wanted to bring in somebody who's worked with various quarterbacks, because you look at Nick Sirianni, and last year it was Phillip Rivers, year before Jacoby Brissett, year before that Andrew Luck, previously in San Diego, Phillip Rivers. He even spent a year with Matt Castle in Kansas City as an assistant quarterbacks coach in 2010, and they had success. They went 10-6 that year. So he's worked with a variety of different quarterbacks, different styles, and his biggest task, his toughest task now is going to be to try and get Carson Wentz back to that 2017 form we saw that he had when Frank Reich was here.
Love to hear it. I mean, I'm more so on the Wentz bandwagon. I want him to be back just because we know the type of quarterback that he can be when he's on his game. And I know this season, I'm hoping going forward was just an anomaly. I'm still a big believer in Wentz. Jalen Hurts did flash some, especially running the ball athletically, but I still think he needs some development. And then whether or not Wentz is the guy, I think Sirianni can be the guy who can also develop Jalen Hurts as well if you do eventually have to move on from Carson Wentz. I feel like he runs a similar style offense to Doug Peterson, but I think the only difference, not really the only difference, but the big difference that stuck out to me was the Eagles' lack of motion that they used in their formations to kind of see what the defense is doing and kind of make it easier on the quarterback's eyes. I think Sirianni is going to bring a lot of motion into this offense, but I still feel like we're going to have a lot of 12 personnel moving forward with the Eagles. Do you think this kind of helps Zach Ertz remain an Eagle, or is he still on his way out the door?
He's under contract, which means they're going to have to make a decision there if he's going to go somewhere else. But the salary cap issue that this team has means there's going to have to be some tough decisions made about some high-priced veteran players. So if it's not Zach, it's going to be other guys. Based on what Zach has said, based on things that I've heard, people that I've spoken to, it sure sounded like Zach was given his farewell the day after the season. So I don't know if Nick Sirianni can change that. If in his interview process he was set on having the two tight ends, because you can't do much better than Goddard and Zach Ertz, especially if Zach can get back to where he was before this season. I would still be, Sean, inclined to think that he's probably not coming back.
Got it. Yeah, that is the way. I mean, especially with this kind of things his brother Nick had tweeted on Twitter, basically saying like, "Thank you for everything you did for Philly," and then same thing he was kind of posting on social media as well. And it is going to suck to see a guy like Ertz go out the door, but it's a business at the end of the day, so you have to make these tough decisions. Do you think, because obviously the Eagles have this number 6 overall pick, do you think that Kyle Pitts is actually in play due to the type of coach that they hired, who is a lot of tight end heavy? And I actually watched him break down film a little bit on the Colts had tweeted it out, and he was referencing a lot. He likes to use the 12 personnel. That's why I'm heavy on it. Do you think Kyle Pitts is a realistic guy that's in play at 6 for the Eagles?
I don't think that high, Sean.
That's what I was thinking.
I don't think it's 6, but I look at this team and as many flaws as they have, they need as many players as they can get. So I would not be opposed to trading out of 6. And I'm not saying trade out of the first round or even trade to the back end of the first round. But if you could drop into the teens and pick up an additional 2, additional 3, whatever that price is, to drop from 6 to 15, 16, whatever it may be, you need a lot. You need players on this team. The biggest issue with this football team this year was not Doug Peterson. It was not Carson Wentz. Both of them share the blame. Both of them certainly can't be absolved of blame. But the biggest issue with this football team and why they went 4-11-1 is a series of poor drafts and not having enough talent. You had an aging, declining roster filled with veteran guys who just were either didn't have it anymore or couldn't even be out on the field. And you didn't have young guys who could step in there and take their role, other than guys you had off the street, a lot of unsigned free agents, undrafted rookies, guys like Travis Fulgham. Where are the 2017, 2018, 2019 young guys who were drafted who could step in under a rookie contract and make an immediate impact? They didn't have those guys.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I kind of got to eat crow a little bit because I was so high on the Jalen Reagor pick. I loved him coming out the draft. I loved him. I wanted him to be the Eagles pick at 21. Obviously, if the big trio of Ruggs, Judy, and Lamb weren't a realistic possibility, I did want him over Jefferson. I'm still in the mindset that Jefferson would not have been doing what he was doing if he was in Philly as opposed to Minnesota. But Reagor was disappointing this year. I'm excited to see him back with a new coach. Maybe that he is able to coach and scheme to some of his strengths, because I think Reagor is a problem with the ball in his hands. I don't think he can be a dynamic playmaker. But as you said, I mean, missing on guys like J.J. Arcega-Whiteside in the second round, and then we obviously beat a dead horse by talking about it with all the guys they passed up after it. But then, as we mentioned this draft, I mean, Jalen Hurts may end up being the successor, but on a team that has a bunch of needs, it was kind of crazy to see in the second round taking a quarterback, especially after you just handed Carson Wentz a payday. And then the biggest draft miss, in my opinion, was the third round pick of Davion Taylor. Not that I don't think he can turn into a good player. At that spot, to me, it was you basically took a guy in the second and third round, and best case scenario, neither of them play. So that's I mean, that's
you're right. And then you look at Sean, you look at Jalen Reagor, and I don't want to make a judgment on him after one season. You know, he had a difficult season. He was injured. There was a lot of adversity for him to overcome. It was a challenging year at the quarterback situation too for them. So I'm not ready to say Jalen Reagor is in any way, shape, or form a bust. So 5 years from now, 6 years from now, we can look at it, and Justin Jefferson may be a 4-time Pro Bowler and a 2-time All-Pro. And Jalen Reagor might be in that same there's still a chance, right? We didn't see it, but there's still a chance. As far as Davion Taylor, I don't know, right? He showed he's a developmental guy. So what did he show to them in practice? What did he show that? Because we didn't see anything. What did he show to them that maybe makes them feel like he could be part of the defense going forward? I don't know. I just look at, 2020, it's too early to judge. 2019 draft, 2018, 17. When you look at some of those drafts and you go, these guys aren't even here anymore.
Right.
That's tough, man. That's tough. And whatever they do this year, whether Sirianni comes in here and can fix Carson or not, they got to hit on these draft picks. This is a crucial, critical draft for this organization.
Agreed wholeheartedly. And then now, speaking of how important this offseason is to the front office, when you have a guy like John Dorsey, who's now in here as a consultant to Howie Roseman, I've seen a couple things floated around earlier today that Sirianni seemed like a Dorsey guy. So maybe he has more input than even we realize, or maybe you can shed some more light onto that. People had referenced that he was in Kansas City, and so was John Dorsey, but they weren't in Kansas City at the same time. Sirianni actually left the season before Dorsey got there, but Dorsey, when he was with the Cleveland Browns, did put in a request to interview Sirianni when he was with the Cleveland Browns for the Browns job. So do you buy into that, or do you think it's more so of a collective agreement?
I think this is a Howie Roseman, Jeff Lurie hiring, and I'm sure they took into consideration opinions from guys like John Dorsey and others in that building. But, make no mistake, to me, this was Howie Roseman, Jeff Lurie being in sync on this coaching hire. And they're looking at a younger guy who is similar to Andy Reid coming out when they hired him, and they hit a home run with Andy Reid, and he was a guy who wasn't a play caller. They look at a guy like Doug Peterson. He wasn't a play caller, but he came in here and he won a Super Bowl. So I look at Sirianni, and I think that they view him in that mold. Here's a guy who's worked with quarterbacks, who's also worked with wide receivers. And let's not discount that, because they got a lot of young wide receivers. And here's a head coach who not only has worked with quarterbacks, he's worked with wide receivers. He actually began his coaching career way back in college as a defensive backs coach. So there's a little bit of a defensive history. He's not just a one-sided offensive-minded coach. So I think they look at the totality of that. And Sean, we really can't overlook the fact that Jeffrey Lurie has become increasingly more involved. And Howie Roseman, we know, has full control of personnel decisions. And whether or not they wanted to bring in a headstrong head coach who's going to force them to give him more power like Chip Kelly did a couple years ago, I don't think that was an attractive situation for them. And I thought all along they were going to end up with somebody who was a first-time head coach. And it doesn't mean that's a bad hire. In no way, shape, or form that mean it's a terrible hire, but it fits exactly what this organization is known for doing.
Exactly. And we can harp on, we talked about it, how bad the draft classes have been from this front office and from the ownership as well. But the one thing I will give Jeffrey Lurie credit on, he's hired very successful head coaches since he's been the owner of the Eagles. Obviously Andy Reid never got the big one, but is going to go down as, in my opinion, the top 3 head coach of all time. Took the Eagles to 3 straight NFC championship games, 4 in total, went to a Super Bowl, and then now obviously is on the cusp of going to back-to-back Super Bowls with the Kansas City Chiefs. And then obviously Doug Peterson got us our first Super Bowl. But even Chip Kelly, when he first came in, obviously his power grab kind of resulted in his firing. But when he first came in, he was the coach of the year, took a 4-12 team and changed them to 10-6 and made the playoffs. So I have to give the Eagles that credit to where when they do hire a head coach, I assume he's going to do a good job.
Yeah, and you're right. Look at that track record. And Ray Rhodes, if you want to go way back to Jeff Lurie's first hire, Ray Rhodes ended up being a 10-game winner, went to the playoffs too. So they've had success. And that doesn't mean I don't think that this team is going to go from 4 wins to 10 wins next year. I just think there's not enough talent. There's that much drop-off from where they were 2 years ago even. But you got to give this guy a chance. I know in this town, in this city, fans are very impatient. Fans are often irrational, and they want immediate success, and they want to blame, and they want to do that. But I think you got to sit back and go, the last 2 coaches, or the 2 coaches or managers, in the case of Charlie Manuel, who were criticized the most during my time, and I've lived here my entire life, and I've been with the AP for 21 years, the most criticized hirings were Charlie Manuel and Doug Peterson. both of those guys ended up winning championships, the only 2 championships. So Nick Sirianni's certainly been a whole lot more well-received than either one of those guys. Hopefully he ends up having success somewhere near both of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, as a fan, like you said, they're still lacking talent. They're gonna have to get rid of some veteran guys who fans may love. As we just mentioned, Zach Ertz earlier in the show, and then you can see Alshon Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson on that cusp as well. But I'm excited just because it's a fresh voice, and it just kind of gives the fan base hope of something that's going to get better. And as we saw the Eagles fall from the Super Bowl in 3 years, a lot can change, but hopefully a lot can change in 3 years for the better. I think the NFL is one of them sports where it's easier to have a quicker turnaround than it is in most sports to get back to success. We see teams who miss the playoffs make it back the next year all the time. I'm not saying that's going to be the Eagles, but I think if there's a sport where it's going to happen, it's the NFL, where it's more than likely where it's quicker.
No, you're right. In the NFL, you can see dramatic turnarounds quickly. I don't know that for me, this team isn't positioned to do that, but it doesn't mean, it starts at the top, and it starts with the head coach and at that quarterback position. So if Carson can turn things around next year, if Sirianni is the guy who can unlock that potential in Carson, that can hide a lot of other problems and a lot of other issues. And if he can take his game, to December 2019 for him, I'm not even asking for 2017. If he could play the way he did in December 2019, those last 4 games when he was throwing to Greg Ward and Josh Perkins and Deontay Burnett and Robert Davis and whoever else, if he can just get it back to that form, this team can easily be 2 or 3 wins better. And then it just depends about what other guys around him can do. We forget that this offensive line was decimated by injury. And that's where, it starts up. If you can get, I don't know what Brandon Brooks is going to be like, but I won't bet against the guy. Same with Lane Johnson. I don't know if he can come back to All-Pro, Pro Bowl form, but that's another guy I wouldn't bet against. If Jason Kelce is revitalized, he wants to come back and rejuvenated and play another season, now you just got to take care of the left side of the line, but you got to keep those guys healthy. So I think you have potential talent at the skill positions. You're going to have to add somebody, whether that is Devonta Smith in the draft or someone else. But there's potential, there's hope. But at this point, I certainly couldn't predict that they're going to be anywhere close to a playoff team. Then again, they are in a terrible division. So it's not like this division's going to all of a sudden leap into being there's no dominant team. There's no dominant, whether it's Washington, the Giants. They're all, I think, New York and Washington are both on the rise. And Dallas, it depends on what they do with Dak Prescott. But there's certainly no reason to be fearful of anyone in the division at this point.
Absolutely. I mean, the Eagles, we talk about the Jalen Hurts and Wentz situation, but there's 2 other teams in the division who are uncertain at the quarterback position as well. Like you just mentioned with Dak Prescott. And then Washington, what are they going to do with Alex Smith? Do they go first-round quarterback? Do they try to trade for a veteran, say like a Matthew Stafford or somebody like that who may be on the market, maybe Matt Ryan? It's going to be interesting to see how the division plays out. The Giants are a team that I feel like everybody's going to be looking at that matchup next year because of how the Eagles did Week 17 to keep the Giants out of the playoffs.
Peterson's not here for it, though, right?
Right, exactly. That would have been awesome. But to me, that was totally blown out of proportion. Teams do what the Eagles do every season. But I want to get your thoughts real quick, because you said that you thought the Eagles are going to hire a guy who was going to be a first-year head coach all along. How close do you think they were to hiring a guy like Josh McDaniels? And then was the in-house candidate that seems every fan wanted in Deuce Staley, how close were they?
I don't think they were close with Deuce. And with Josh McDaniels, we had heard rumblings that they were close, but that this was – I feel in a case of a guy like Josh McDaniels, ultimately he's got a strong personality, and I don't know how that would have played with the dynamics of the front office and the ownership here. So I think there were concerns there. I think they liked his resume. Clearly, he probably was the most accomplished candidate because he's coached before. He's won Super Bowls before. But realistically, too, it's a very valid concern to have in that, well, Josh McDaniels had his success with Tom Brady, not much without Tom Brady. So I'm sure that was cause for a little pause at the very least. But ultimately, I think it came down to Josh McDaniels probably isn't the kind of guy who will let you push him around in any way. Whereas a first-year head coach who will be more than happy to take on this position and see what he gets him, because especially in a guy like Sirianni's case, I'm not saying that he's going to be gone in 2 or 3 years, but he's 39 years old. He's on the rise. It's his first head coaching opportunity, and it certainly, in his mind, isn't going to be the last. If it doesn't work out here, he's got to have confidence in himself that he can go somewhere else and get it done. So that's why I think they were able to make a deal and get something done with a guy who was a first-time head coach. As far as Deuce, Sean, I think the unfortunate thing is now is you're seeing a spin and a narrative that the Eagles didn't hire Deuce Staley because of Carson Wentz, which is just, people continue to try and shovel dirt on Carson Wentz more and more and more. I've never seen anything like it for somebody who doesn't deserve it. I've seen people pile on guys who have brought this on themselves. But to think that the Eagles wanted Deuce Staley and didn't hire him because Carson Wentz wouldn't be happy with that, to me, is just more exaggeration and a spin and a narrative that people with agendas are trying to create. And it's unfortunate because, to me, it couldn't be further from the truth.
I'm glad you brought that up. And I don't want to take up your whole night. I just have a couple more things I want to ask, but I'm glad you just brought up that Carson Wentz thing. Is it feels like every day I wake up and I go on Twitter or I go on social media, there's a new article out. This guy doesn't like Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz basically told the Eagles it was Doug Peterson or him. Carson Wentz blew out this little girl's birthday candles. He didn't like. I feel like every day there's something new.
Waiting for that one. That's a good one, man.
But how and like everybody wants to make a big deal about the lack of, I guess, statements Carson Wentz has made. He hasn't really talked to the media since his benching. He didn't come out and say like thank you Doug or whatever on social media, I guess, that some people wanted, and then he still hasn't said anything about the Sirianni hiring. So I'm curious your thoughts on like how big of a deal is that, and or if any.
That's just conversation material. That's just stuff that people want to talk about on talk radio and people want to talk about on podcasts and stuff like that. And I do it too when I'm on the radio myself. But I have said in regards to whether Carson Wentz should say something. Me personally, my type of personality is such that I would say something, but I try to understand what his point of view may be. And from a guy who realizes there's nothing I can say that is going to end anything, because people are going to take his words and dissect them, analyze them, break them down, and then write whatever they want and form whatever opinion they want. Okay. Also, from his standpoint, he doesn't know if he's going to be here next year. He finished the year as a backup quarterback. So he finished the year as the backup quarterback, not the starting quarterback. How many backup quarterbacks talk in the offseason? He doesn't know. We don't know what his future is. But, he's also a guy who doesn't use his social media that way. He uses his social media for things about his foundation, for things about his faith. He doesn't really use his social media to talk about anything. I'm sure he has at some point. But, that's just trying to understand. I've said that I would say something. I would just come out and put an end to all of it. But, it's one of those situations where he can't win. There's nothing he can say that's going to appease people. And I've talked about, I've reported certain things along the way, and I've got a lot of sources close to the situation, so I've put things out there. But again, people, if someone has an agenda, they'll overlook my report and refer to another. So
absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And then I just have one last thing before I let you go. It's actually not Eagles related, but I know you are an MLB Hall of Fame voter. So I actually want to ask you about the NFL Hall of Fame. Is Phillip Rivers an NFL Hall of Famer in your opinion?
Yeah, you know what? I had this conversation yesterday, and you got to look long and hard at his stats. He didn't win a Super Bowl, but ultimately, there's guys like Dan Fouts who didn't, Dan Marino who didn't. He put up a tremendous amount of numbers, 13-time Pro Bowler, I believe, but he also was a product of this passing league and this passing era.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Phillip Rivers is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I think this is a debate that people are going to continue to have after he's eligible, and it may take some time. I do think in the end he'll end up being a Hall of Famer, but his case isn't as solid as Ben Roethlisberger's, for example, another guy in his draft class, or even Eli Manning, who did win 2 Super Bowls. But I said this on my podcast for the AP. The most impressive thing about Phillip Rivers was his ability to talk so much trash, Sean, and not curse. Like, dadgummit word. Like, how can you hear a dude say dadgummit and not laugh and take him seriously? Right. That was his go-to word. And to me, that was impressive. I heard J.J. Watt tell a story about one time he's at the line of scrimmage, and he looks over at a Texans linebacker and tells that linebacker, hey, you're playing in the wrong spot for the blitz that you guys are supposed to be running against me right now. And JJ's like, he was right, and he knew the play. So, I mean, he was a funny dude, and really appreciate the guy he is. But at this point right now, I would say more not Hall of Famer, but I could be talked into it at some point. And I'm glad I don't vote for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It's tough, man. There's going to be a lot of tough decisions.
Absolutely. And I'm on the same boat as you. When somebody asked me, I was like, no shot Phillip Rivers is a Hall of Famer. But then when you actually look at his numbers, I could see it. Like, I wouldn't argue it if he got in. But then obviously the other quarterback that's rumored to be retiring is Drew Brees. But he's a no question, no brainer Hall of Famer. But I think when it comes down to this era of quarterbacks that's going to be leaving, Brady and Rodgers, obviously in the near future, we think. In the near future, they'll be gone. But I think I'm going to miss Phillip Rivers more than Drew Brees just because of, like you said, the character he is.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. And I thought it was really cool. A fitting end to Drew Brees' career was the images that we saw of him playing with his kids on the field like a couple hours after that game. That's who he is. I always think of Drew Brees as, a tremendous football player. But he had, he's such a strong – and Phillip Rivers got 9 or 10 kids. I don't know how – I lost track. But Drew's got 3 sons and a daughter. And, he's just a strong family man. And that's something that I can appreciate as a dad of 2 little girls. So I just thought that was beautiful, like a nice little image of Drew Brees and then Tom Brady hugging him on the way out, throwing a ball to one of his kids. So the last touchdown pass Brady threw in that stadium wasn't to whoever he threw. It was to one of Drew Brees' kids. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I did see that video. It was touching for sure, seeing that after the game, and it kind of set home that Drew Brees is probably never going to lace them up again. But Rob, I want to thank you for joining me again. I don't want to take up your whole night, as Nick, our lovely producer, just put on the screen. Make sure to follow Rob on Twitter at Rob Maadi. Check out his work at 97.5 The Fanatic, and of course with the AP. And then he also does tremendous work with at Faith on the Field as well. And make sure, if you are into that, and obviously Philadelphia Eagles, of course you are, because you want to be listening to this. If you weren't, make sure you grab his book, Birds of Prey, as well. That's Pray, Birds of Prey. Rob, again, thank you. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, man. You have a great night. Have a blessed night to you and Nick. Take care.
Thanks, Rob. You too. All right, that was Rob Maadi from the AP and 97.5 The Fanatic joining me. We are getting ready to welcome in Ed Kracz in a few minutes from Sports Illustrated. I'm going to hit home with the same things that I talked about Rob with. I just want to get a different perspective from a guy like Ed. They have 2 different thought process, so I'm curious to see how they differ in their views. But again, if you guys are tuning in, whether you're on YouTube or whether you're on our Facebook page at Unsportsmanlike Content, at UC Sports Media on Twitter, Unsportsmanlike_content on Instagram, make sure you comment any questions you have, whether they're for me or whether they're for Ed, who's going to be joining us, or just something you want to hear us talking about. You can always chime in the comment section as well. But Rob gave some insight, and like I said, that's a guy who's really close with Carson Wentz. They built a relationship through obviously their religious beliefs, and that's a guy. If I want trusted Carson Wentz news or what he's actually feeling, Rob is my go-to guy with that scenario. So make sure you give him a follow at Rob Maadi. And like I said, just a great dude. First time I ever got media credentials, he went out of his way in the press box, the elevator to the press box, to introduce himself. And then obviously I've been listening to him on the Fanatic for years, and he does a tremendous job over there as well. And Ed you're gonna love Ed coming up. If you guys never seen him on our show before, he's an awesome guy. Has a funny side to him, kind of keeps things loose, and I'm excited to welcome him in. And he should be joining us any minute. But back to Ed is here. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and welcome Ed into the show. You know, I was floundering a little bit, Ed. I just had Rob Maadi on earlier, and trying to fill time in between you and him. I was floundering, so you came to the rescue there.
Nice, happy to help, man. How you been?
I'm good. How are you, Ed?
Good. Thanks, Sean.
Yep. But real quick, obviously the biggest news of the day is Nick Sirianni, the new head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. I just got Rob's perspective on that, so I'm curious to hear your initial thoughts on the hiring.
Wait, the Eagles hired a coach today? Wow, shocking, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, they haven't confirmed it, actually.
I thought the search was going to go on so long they were going to interview Doug again.
Yeah, right, by accident. Yeah, right. Yeah, well, listen, I mean, 10 days, I guess, that's not too bad of a time frame to find a new coach, but it's interesting.
That's all it was 10 days?
Yeah, no, it felt like 10 weeks. It was 10 days. But, Sirianni was the ninth guy that they talked to, which was obviously late in the process. And really kind of out of the blue because there were so many reports. And I, to be honest, I had been told as well, only by one person, that the job was going to go to McDaniels. And, I really need, on a story like that, I need two people to confirm
absolutely
that happening. So I couldn't get a second source to confirm. And I'm really glad I didn't because look what happened. But that was the indication was McDaniels was getting this job. And then Monday came and they brought in Todd Bowles, and then they brought in Kellen Moore, and then Nick Sirianni, and then Dennis Allen was the last interview. But he must have hit a home run, Nick Sirianni, in my opinion, in that interview process because he came late to the party. The interview spilled into the next day. They couldn't finish it Tuesday. It went into Wednesday. So obviously there was some and interest on both parts. But he must have really knocked it out of the park in that interview because here we are a day after his interview and he's the new coach. So
yeah, that was my thinking is the whole time, like you said, I thought it was McDaniel's job to lose. All the signs indicated that it was going to be him, and then it kind of just popped up out of nowhere. It was like, hey, the Eagles are interviewing the Colts offensive coordinator today, and then then it's like, oh, they're bringing him back Wednesday, and then it's like now he has the job here on Thursday, and I'm just like, hopefully he coaches as well as he interviews because he's going to be fantastic. But it did kind of come out of nowhere, and I honestly wasn't even thinking of him when I was like going back and doing some research on the potential head coaches. But I will say I watched him break down film on one of the videos that the Colts had posted during the season. And he actually, two of the videos that he broke down were Eagles offensive plays. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And he talked about his love of the 12 personnel, how it exploits mismatches. And when you have athletic tight ends like, say, Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert, it really is strugglish on the defense to be able to match up with you on that. So I kind of feel like we're going to get an offense similar to Doug Peterson with him, but I think there's a little more creativity with Sirianni as far as like motions and stuff goes. And I asked Rob this, and obviously the business side of things is going to be the ultimate deciding factor. But do you think this hiring a coach who puts an emphasis on the 12 personnel like the same way Doug did is going to give Zach Ertz a better chance to be an Eagle next year?
No, I don't. I don't think they can. No, I don't think Zach's coming back. I really don't.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this changes that. I'm not even sure it changes Carson's feeling about coming back. I think it will. I think this is the perfect hire for him. I don't think he's going to come out now and ask to be traded. I think that he's going to be the starting quarterback. It's going to be interesting to see if Nick wants to announce it's an open quarterback competition, and that can kind of consume a team, especially a team that I think is going to be fairly young next year, younger than this year anyway. So I'm not sure he'll come out and say, yeah, Carson's our starter. Jalen's going to back him up. And then how short of a leash will he have? I mean, there's still so much not to be known. And that 12 personnel that you talk about, I know under Doug, they wanted to get away from that. They wanted to use more of the 11 personnel set, the receivers. I mean, Eagles went out and drafted 3 guys. They brought in Marquise Goodwin, who didn't even play. He opted out for the COVID. So they brought in 4 new receivers, and it wasn't just about speed and trying to find, depth. It was about they wanted to use 3 wide receivers on the field more than 12 personnel. Spread the field a little bit more with those receivers. I would be kind of disappointed, to be honest with you, if the Eagles went back to that 12 personnel. I don't think it's a good formula anymore for success. I mean, look what Brian Daboll's doing in Buffalo.
Yeah,
I think they're putting 5 wides out there. I mean, they're spreading teams out. I mean, I think you come out in this day and age with the points, teams averaging 25 points or more per game. I don't think you get that with a ball controlled down the field, methodical 2 tight end set. I think you need to open it up with receivers, and I'm really hoping that that's what Sirianni does. As much as you hate to lose Zach Ertz, I'm hoping that he goes just so they don't go back to that 12 personnel. I don't want them to do that. I want them to open it up with receivers. When Sirianni was the receivers coach, actually was an offensive quality control coach in San Diego in 2013, and the Chargers drafted Keenan Allen in the 3rd round. And Sirianni was in San Diego when they brought Allen in, and Allen had a fantastic rookie year. He had 8 touchdown catches, over 1,000 yards receiving, 71 catches. And I'm pretty sure Sirianni had a hand in that. Excuse me. He had a hand in that, and he also saw how that happened. So I'm hoping that he comes in here and gets with not only Carson, but Jalen Reagor and, Quez Watkins and John Hightower and Greg Ward, and develops these receivers into quality receivers and understands and knows how to use these guys.
Yes, I'm in complete agreement with you, because I said so many times last year, when you watch the Eagles on offense and then you watch a team like the Buffalo Bills or the Kansas City Chiefs, it's like you're watching 2 different sports. I mean, with the way they just have guys running around, and they're so creative with what they do. And I will give Sirianni credit. I just noticed that he had highlighted the 12 personnel in that video. But if you actually watch the Colts last year, I mean, they don't have the tight ends to run 12 personnel in Indianapolis for the most part. But I think he did a tremendous job with Michael Pittman as a rookie. He exceeded my expectations down there. So I'm excited to see Jalen Reagor and, like you brought up, Quez Watkins and Hightower in that offense as well. And
that's a good point about Pittman. I mean, Pittman did a nice job as a rookie, and it's not like they're just going to completely ignore tight ends. The Colts have Jack Doyle and another guy's name I can't pronounce. I can't remember, but
Mo Alley Cox, and then
that's it, Mo Alley Cox. So I mean, they have tight end talent, and he used it, but he didn't depend on it and didn't lean on it 58% of the time like the Eagles did in the past. And that to me is just too predictable. Not that quick strike ability that teams use. I want to see more of that.
Yes, I'm in full agreement with you. That's part of the reason why I'm so excited. To be honest, they could have hired anybody but McDaniels, and I would have been excited. Just because it's just too much bad history with McDaniels as a head coach, and then obviously as a coordinator as well. So, and just as a fan, it's just a sense of hope, and like something's going to change, and it's going to be different. I don't think they're going to go from a 4-win team to a 12-win team next year. I don't think that's realistic given their roster. I mean, if the O-line comes back healthy and Carson Wentz is back to being Carson Wentz, then maybe you can make that jump. But I think it's a huge stretch to think they're going to go improve that much. But then they are in a bad division, so I think they are, as long as they're not absolutely terrible, they're going to be in the mix for a playoff spot next year again.
Yeah, and I know it's way too early with the division talk, and the division was pretty dreadful this year. But, you got to think the Cowboys, when they get Dak back, improve that defense, they're going to be better. Washington, their defense is pretty solid. They need a quarterback. Maybe they get one in the draft this year, and then they get better. And the Giants, to me, are probably going to improve. They'll get Saquon Barkley back, second year in Joe Judge's offense. So I think they'll be better. I think the NFC East will be better. And where the Eagles fit in there, way too soon to say. I mean, it's good that they got this coaching deal out of the way now, because there's so many other issues on this team that now they can kind of turn to those. First, they got to put a staff together, obviously, the offensive, defensive coordinators and then assistants. But, there's a lot of personnel issues. And you have an all-star game coming up here January 30th down in Mobile, the Senior Bowl. And it's good to have a coach in place, because you're not going to have the combine this year. I mean, the combine is going to be all virtual, so you're really not going to have all these testing ingredients to figure out, these sit-down interviews. And I mean, you're still going to talk to guys on the virtually, but it's not going to be the same. So these all-star games, you really have to be able to make sure you're all dug in, and you're approaching it maybe differently than you have in the past, because these are very few opportunities you're going to get to see these guys. So now you have a coach in place. You're going to put a system in place. You're going to know what kind of defense you're running, what kind of offense you're going to be looking for. So now you can start to zero in on some of these guys in these all-star games.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That totally slipped my mind about the virtual no combine this year. Everything's going to be done via virtual pro days. I thought we had seen it all with the virtual draft last year, and that was chaotic. That was chaotic itself. And then now you're talking about having to scout guys via Zoom or via whatever it is. It just adds another challenge to this front office and scouting department.
Right.
But
now you have a coach who can say, look, this is my offensive philosophy. This is what I want to do. These are the kind of linemen I look for. I want to do are you going to do the zone blocking scheme? I mean, now you know what the coach's expectations are. And that's why they need now to get a DC in here, a defensive coordinator, to see what kind of defense you're running. Because to me, this defense, I know they have the 6th pick in the draft, and everybody's saying Devontae Smith, and it's a shame it's not really a strong defensive class, I don't think. But they really need to hammer out on the defense with this draft. I mean, Micah Parsons, maybe the defensive coordinator now, likes linebackers. Maybe maybe we go for Micah Parsons. Who knows? I mean, they need cornerback. Do you draft a cornerback top 10? I don't know.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think I would be mad. I haven't gotten too in-depth in watching all the prospects yet, but just off of what I saw going through like the college football season and the college football playoffs, I don't think I would be mad at a guy like Micah Parsons. Obviously, he didn't play this year, but what he's able to do. Obviously playing for Penn State, who's I guess the local big college outside of Temple here in the Philadelphia area. And then Patrick Surtain, again, the same thing for Alabama. The guy's been locked down. I don't think any Eagles fan could be upset if either of them two were the pick at number 6. I actually brought up to Rob earlier, and he kind of shot it down, and I'm glad he did, because it's kind of gaining traction on Eagles Twitter, is Kyle Pitts at number 6. And like you said, you wanted to get away from the 12 personnel, and Pitts is a freak. I think he's a guy that you can actually play out wide just because of how athletic he is. But I think I would be underwhelmed if they picked him at 6.
See, I like Pitts. I mean, that guy didn't drop a pass all year.
Oh, I'm with you.
Yeah, he's called a tight end, but he
lines up everywhere.
He could be a mismatch problem no matter where you put him. And he's going to catch the ball. You just don't want him to block much. Unless you can teach him. But I don't have a problem with Pitts at all. I really don't. But just because of the matchup nightmares that I think he could present with his size and his ability to play inside, outside. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to Pitts at all. I don't think they'll go that way. But who the heck knows? I mean, everybody thinks receiver. And look, they've picked in the top 10 very rarely. And when you look at who they took a quarterback, number 2 overall in 2016 with Carson Wentz. They took Lane Johnson in 2013, so a tackle. Back in 2000, I think they took Corey Simon, number 6 overall, a D tackle, and then they took McNabb 2nd overall in 1999. These are all Jeffrey Lurie years that even Howie Roseman was influenced by. So if you look at the positions that they're looking at in the top 10, it's quarterback and offensive or defensive line. So you have to look and see anybody there fit the bill. Do they go quarterback? I doubt it. Not if they're going to fix Carson and they have Jalen. They're going to need a quarterback, but you're going to bring in a vet. But here we are talking about the draft now. It's crazy, and that's what getting the coaching situation kind of hammered out. Now we turn the page and we can start analyzing more of these kinds of personnel things.
Absolutely. And then now, as you mentioned, obviously they got to get their coordinators locked in.
Right.
Now that you have a head coach, I don't know if you're hearing any rumblings. I kind of would like the Colts DC. Why am I blanking on his name right now? Not the DC, the Colts secondary coach. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Jonathan Gannon.
Jonathan Gannon, yes, is a candidate who I think. I mean, I'm throwing that out there because he has links to Sirianni already, and he's interviewing with the Rams and the Jaguars as well. But are you hearing any possibilities?
Well, Gannon, obviously, and to be honest with you, today's the first name I ever heard the name Jonathan Gannon. I didn't know who he was or, what his deal was. But he's been in the league for 13 years. I know the Rams, Brandon Staley, their new coach, is trying to talk to him into coming out to be his defensive coordinator. But the downside to that is Brandon Staley is a defensive guy. Brandon Staley would probably be calling the defensive plays. So you come to Philly, and there's no defensive guy in place. Sirianni's an offensive guy. So now all of a sudden that job in Philly is more attractive. But again, I don't know Jonathan Gannon and what he's done. I just heard his name for the first time like 4 hours ago. So, seriously, I mean, so I don't know. But as far as a defensive guy, they brought in Gerard Mayo for a head coaching interview. Maybe they circle back with him and they talk to Nick. Hey, here's the tape. I'm sure they taped these interviews when they did them. You show Nick the tape of Gerard, and if he has any follow-ups, you call him. And would Mayo be interested in coming here to be the DC? So I don't think you can discount his name in this mix. But those are probably the two in the early going here that I would look to as the DC. And the OC probably not as big of a hire because Mike or Nick is the he's going to probably call the plays, I would guess. So you're going to have a situation where you're just going to want to bring in a guy that you're comfortable helping mold your game plan during the week, and who that could be. I'm probably pretty sure it won't be Deuce.
I'm glad you just said that because I was actually going to ask, is this the last we see of Deuce? Because I mean, obviously he's actually survived multiple coaching staffs and has remained with the Eagles. Obviously, was a player with them, but now has passed over yet again for a promotion. And is there any possibility he's back with the team, or do you think?
Well, I mean, what are Deuce's possibilities at this point? He hasn't interviewed. He didn't get called in for any other interviews for the head coaching jobs. There were 7 openings. Didn't get a single look. I'm not sure what his options are. I'm sure there'll be options, but are they options that he'll be happy with? I don't know. But I just don't see how, unless he can be the offensive coordinator and call plays, or at least have some sort of a role calling plays, whether it's for a quarter or a half. I mean, I don't see him doing that. And I don't see him remaining as the running back coach, although he could if there's no other opportunity. But I expect Deuce would get opportunities to go be an assistant elsewhere. But I just don't think he's going to be the OC. And to be honest, I'd be very surprised if he came back.
Yeah, that's the kind of what I was thinking too. It might be better for him because I feel like the biggest knock that people have on him is that it's, he's been the Eagles running back coach for forever. He was the assistant head coach last year. And then there's been almost no interest around the league. So it might be better for him for his career to prove it that he can go do a good job elsewhere. And of course, I mean, Deuce is a lifelong Eagles fan. Got nothing but love for Deuce. So I hope he has nothing but success wherever he goes. But Ed,
I was going to say maybe like a Jim Caldwell as an OC.
I would be totally on board with that.
I would like to see too, and the whole Rooney Rule and hiring minorities. I mean, the Eagles have to do a better job in this area, I think, and maybe a Gerard Mayo and a Jim Caldwell. They're minorities, but they're not just minorities. I mean, these are good people, good coaches.
Yes.
I think would make a lot of sense to bring in, especially an older guy like Jim Caldwell, who can kind of be that crutch for Nick to lean on.
And he's had so much success with quarterbacks.
Yes.
I think this would be a perfect situation to bring a guy like Jim Caldwell in.
Yeah. I mean, that'd be great. I mean, I would love to see them go kind of that direction with these hirings. Just a little more diversity and talent. I mean, these guys are talented guys. Gerard Mayo is very highly respected in New England, well respected by the players that play for him. Played in the league for 8 years. Kind of Belichick's right-hand man on defense. So if you'd be willing to come, I mean, Belichick might slap the DC label on him.
Yeah.
We're staying here, man. But we'll see. I mean, it's good that we're talking about this now.
Yes.
And personnel and draft, other than, hey, is it going to be Joe Brady we're going to hire or Todd Bowles? Now that's out of the way. Nick Sirianni's the guy, and that's cool. Let's move on.
Were you shocked a little bit that the Eagles actually blocked Dave Phipp from going and interviewing with the Detroit Lions?
Well, I think they wanted to get a coach in place, and maybe that was part of the process when they were talking to these coaches. Like, okay, look at our staff. Here's our staff. Who do you see being a part of that staff if you were to get the job? And maybe Nick or whoever identified Phipp as being a guy. I mean, Phipp's done a good job with special teams when he's had the talent. There was some slippage this year, very different year with the COVID and very young team trying to find parts to play, and you're not on the field with them all the time like you would be in a normal circumstance. So, maybe they said, well, I like Phipp, love Stout, what he did with this line. You guys were banged up all year with offensive linemen, and Stout kept rolling these guys out there that I had never heard of as a coach. And, they're blocking guys.
Yes.
So, Stout, and then I guess they're the only two, right? That kind of
that have kind of been rumored to be back. Yes. Yeah,
I know they lost their defensive line assistant Nate Ollie. He went to, I think, the Jets. I think, but yeah, they lost their offensive line assistant. And Matt Burke even. Matt Burke did a nice job with the defensive line, and who knows? Maybe he's going to be the defensive coordinator. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, he was the guy that seemed to have the front running status when Schwartz left and before they fired Doug. So, who knows? Maybe Matt Burke is still in the mix.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to that. Like you said, he's done a pretty good job with the front, and it'd be interesting to see how he would handle the defense as a whole. But
right.
As you mentioned with the job, and I already had you on for longer than I told you I would, and I apologize for that.
That's fine. No worries.
But I just have two more things that I want to hit on. You mentioned how great of a job Stoutland did with the offensive line. What are your thoughts? I mean, obviously we're months away from this, but thoughts coming into training camp next year. Who do you think is your day one? Who's your left tackle, Maliata or Dillard?
That's a good one. I hate when guys lose jobs because of injury, and that's what happened with Dillard. So I'd probably go with Dillard and make him lose the job or make Jordan beat him out. So I would probably go with Andre Dillard, and hopefully there are preseason games in August.
Yes.
And that kind of stuff will, we'll see who rises to the top there. But I would probably go with Andre Dillard at this point, even though Mulata did hey, great job, man. I mean,
yes.
He was fantastic. He's a mountain too, 6'8", 360. Hard to get around. And even Brandon Graham, when you talk, like, what's the difference with him and Jason Peters back when we were Zooming with Graham in October, November. And he said, well, it's just a lot harder to get around Jordan Mulata because he's so big, it's like going around, around a continent. So, but I would still go Andre Dillard. I think, as a first round pick, and, that might not even be Sirianni's call.
Right.
Howie's call, because, hey, I drafted Dillard first round. We're playing Dillard and see what he can do. So I'm going to go Dillard.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I mean, Maliata had a great season. Came out of nowhere,
Yeah.
and then filled in nicely for the offensive line this year. But yeah, as you said, they spent draft capital and a first round pick on Andre Dillard. You
And
can't give up.
he's a great dude, man. Malata's a really good. He's a great guy to talk to.
Yeah.
He's a fun guy. He's a genuine guy. He has good stories. He was one of those guys back when we were allowed in the locker room that you could just kind of go up to and start talking about whatever. And, Jordan would go right along with you, man. He'd talk to you and enjoy the conversation.
Yeah, he seems like, I mean, I've seen the videos online of him singing and all that too. So, I mean, he's a jack. He might be the biggest singer in the world. But no, he's a fun guy.
He wouldn't want to go on The Masked Singer. I don't watch that show.
Yeah.
You know right away. That's Malata. He's nobody else. 6'9", 360.
100%.
Yeah.
Real quick before I let you go, I just have one last question. It's actually not Eagles related. I'm just curious to hear guys' opinion on it. We had two quarterbacks who maybe played their last game this past weekend, and Drew Brees, and then obviously Phillip Rivers did announce his retirement. We know Drew Brees is a shoo-in. He's going to probably get in on the first ballot in the NFL Hall of Fame. In your opinion, is Phillip Rivers a Hall of Famer?
Well, it's probably not a popular take, but I was never a real big Phillip Rivers fan, to be honest. I thought he was a little overrated. I mean, I know he's put up a lot of yards and stuff, but I know it takes more than one guy to get to a Super Bowl and win in the playoffs and stuff like that. But his track record of getting in the playoffs and having any kind of success is not very good. And I know Dan Marino played in, I guess, one Super Bowl and never got back, and he's in the Hall of Fame. But I just think Phillip Rivers was always a little overrated. I mean, that's not to say he won't get in the Hall of Fame, but he's certainly not a first ballot Hall of Famer like Drew Brees is. Brees for me is, the first day he's eligible, he's going in, like Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, those kind of guys. But Phillip Rivers isn't in that same conversation for me.
I'm in agreement with you. I said the same thing. Just off when somebody asked me, I'm like, no shot. Is he a Hall of Famer? But actually, when I look at his numbers, he's like top 5 in a couple categories.
Yeah.
13 prime Pro Bowler, and I'm just like, I could see the case. I wouldn't argue if they did put him in, but like you said, I kind of had the same mindset when I just thought about Phillip Rivers' career.
Yeah, I'm not a big numbers compiler. I mean, you don't know at what point in games he was able to put up some of those numbers. Were they in losses? Were they playing catch up? I mean, to me, it's how you play a lot in the clutch, what you've done when the pressure moments. Which to me, you could throw Eli Manning in there. I mean, hey, look, Eli Manning to me won 2 Super Bowls, and I put a lot of weight on postseason success and pressure moments, and I think Eli has showed himself to be able to overcome those moments, and I think Eli should be in the Hall of Fame before Phillip Rivers. I know I guess Eli retired last year and Phillip this year, so they wouldn't be in the same, in the same class. But I would put Eli in well before I'd put Rivers in.
Absolutely, and then Eli knocking off the undefeated Patriots too. Kind of might have just cemented himself in the Hall of Fame as well.
I mean, a lot of people around here don't like him, but and they make fun of his whiny face and stuff like that, and make all the memes with him. But listen, I think Eli was a great quarterback and should be in. And Phillip Rivers, I'm not a big, like I said, I'm not a big guy that likes people that just compile numbers. I mean, you got to be more than just numbers. That to me is, just a hollow suit. Really, you got to do more. You have to be more.
That's how I'm kind of looking at a guy like Frank Gore in that light. That's a guy that I thought was like a tremendous player, but like now the more he plays, I'm like the less I like him because now I'm feel like he's just doing it to do it, and I don't think he should get Hall of Fame consideration just because of how he's playing now and how he's getting the numbers. But
that's a topic for another show, dude.
Absolutely.
Like, we could go through Sproles and Jason Peters and, a bunch of guys, write down names and debate it.
Absolutely. I'm going to have to hold you to that. And I think that would be a fun show. But Ed, thank you. I appreciate you taking time out of your day. I know you're a busy man, especially now with the news today. Again, it's a pleasure having you on as always. And I hope to talk to you again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks, Ed. All right, that was Ed Kracz from Sports Illustrated. I didn't know how to get rid of him. I didn't know if he thought I was ending the show right there or not. But he's a pleasure to talk to. Ed's a great guy. One of my favorite people in the industry. But that's going to wrap up the Daily Dose for today. If you guys joined late, and I had Rob Maadi on earlier from the 97.5 The Fanatic and the Associated Press, if you missed any of that conversation, it was very interesting to get Ed and Rob's takes on certain subjects. So make sure you can find the Daily Dose. This episode will be out tomorrow morning. Wherever you find podcasts, just search the Daily Dose. And if you follow me on social media at Redden Sports on Twitter, Sean Redden Sports on Instagram, or just on Sportsmanlike Content on Facebook as well, where you're watching the show. You can find it there as well. It'll be up tomorrow morning wherever you find podcasts. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. For Sean, Nick producing in the back. We'll talk to you guys later.